All right. Hi, everyone. Hope you all are doing good and staying safe. It's great to be here in this session. And thanks, IIT, for conducting this particular session. And thanks to IIT Cutting Edge team for the invite. And before I kick off, kudos to the organizers for this amazing work you have been doing over the years. And this year committee as well. Today, I will be covering one of the hottest topic these days, the thing called cloud. I'm sure every one of you know what is cloud in general, but to those who don't know or understand the technology term named cloud, this session is very relevant for you. Yeah, cloud computing is one of the trending technologies areas for the past decade, and the job demand is very high for those who are experienced on it, right? Since most of you are in your university and exploring internship and also doing final year projects, it will be help you to kickstart your journey with cloud via this session. All right, before I actually dive into the session, let me introduce myself. I will take 2 minutes to introduce myself. I do this kind of marketing things in all the sessions I do. Just a piece of advice here. Being a hard coder doesn't make you successful in your career. You need to market yourself. So this is one of the hardest lessons I learned in my career as well. I am Sajidran, currently working as a senior product manager for Cosmos DB in the Azure team at Microsoft. Web development is my passion and cloud is my profession. So prior to that, I worked as a cloud solution architect at Microsoft, and most part of my career, I was a developer and an architect in different companies in Sri Lanka. I am passionate in the areas of open source and cloud computing. I love to build things for the community. So if you are a person who is having interest in building the community, please reach out to me. And if you are interested in these areas, always you can talk to me at any time. You can use the social links which are listed below. And also, without any further ado, let me do some housekeeping announcements. Regarding this session, this is targeted towards students who are very new to cloud and also wants to kickstart their journey on cloud, and definitely not for experts. So if you have any experience on cloud, you might find some of the things which you already knew. So I have planned to cover this session in 3 aspects, right? If you're wondering about the agenda, I will be covering this fundamentals or generic concepts on cloud computing, and I will also demonstrate the capabilities by taking one of the public cloud and one of my favorite, Azure, as an example for an application development. Also, there is a small demo covering the features which we will be talking about. You will see it in action if the demo god help us today. If you have any questions, feel free to unmute or post in the chat. Let's dive into the session. Yeah, in all my session, I try to set a goal for the audience. And by the way, if you want access to the slides, you can always navigate to slides.com and use this particular URL. And as I mentioned, I used to keep challenge for all the sessions I do, right? So, and the challenge for today is how to leverage cloud services and build your $1 million idea application quickly to the cloud. So I know Cutting Edge is one of the initiatives that you guys are doing to build new solutions. So probably this session might help you to build that idea and put it on cloud. I wanted to start with a small story, right? Back in 1990s, when I was a kid, when we were in school, we used to have this application called as Pascal programming, where you would create desktop applications, which is basically integrated with different environment. There was no such things called cloud those days. Yes, we had the general cloud, which everyone knows about. But whenever I want to share some application with my friend, or need to access the same program, I have to make a copy of that program in a floppy drive, which is just 1.44 megabytes, and walk 2 kilometers to give that pen drive that could have a virus, right? So then later in the stages of 2000s, when everyone got to know about internet, the web applications came into existence, right? You can see the first version of Amazon Webbooks. Initially, if you know the Amazon story, they started their cloud journey in 2006, right? For their internal usage with storage buckets, which is S3 for storage, and to scale their customers. So cloud existence came in the later stages of 2000, after 2006. Now, if someone wants to build an application and make it available to million users across the globe, and if they want to do it in seconds, which is possible via the magic world called cloud, where you can, where you are renting out the hardware and also all the capabilities to build applications that you want to run, and also scale your applications as the way you need. Let me explain that in detail, right? Assume if you're working for a company or owning a company, or a person who wanted to build an application or a website, or build any kind of network in the before time, right? You had to buy all your services, computers, and put them in a big racks or closet. If you have gone to any of those big companies like Dialog or SLT, you might have seen in the past they have big racks of computers in a separate server room, right? Assume what would happen if Sri Lanka get a earthquake or something like tsunami happens. So if everything goes, then all the data and assets are gone, right? And then if you want to build the same environment, and then probably you would, as I explained, it might break all the time, right? And you would have to buy more and more whenever things exhaust. Then you would probably need, or definitely buy too many, or which wouldn't be enough to scale your applications as how the users wanted, right? Because everything always changes in the world of software development. So you might need to buy additional computers or servers, and then it might get exploded, and this is how it is going to look like, which is very hassle to manage, and you are going to have hard time in managing the resources and deploying the applications on top of that. So companies like Amazon, Microsoft, and Google have huge amount of data centers that contain billions of compute and storage resources that used to keep up with global demands, right? And they let you to deploy your applications on top of that. That means if you want to pay for pay a few dollars for a server and maybe to a data center to make little website available to your end users that may you have planned to delete at later stages, you can do that, right? Instead of investing in your own hardware, which is some kind of animal, if you think based on the scenarios that I explained. It also means that if your website goes viral, there are many incidents that happened in the past, right? Even recently, one of the incidents that happened is Fastly, right? Where they used to provide the content delivery network. When the Fastly went down, all the dependent services also went down, right? And the developers were not able to access Stack Overflow, GitHub. So imagine the same scenario if your entire server goes down, your end customers or the application users will not be able to access, right? And imagine if your website goes viral in a day and you start making billions of dollars using that website, and suddenly you need thousands of servers in order to scale your application and stream, do some data streaming, machine learning, and with petabytes of storage. You can do that with the cloud, the power of cloud. And it also means that all your users are stop going to your website, right? If something happened, if they are not able to access, you no longer feel like hosting it, or once the deal is gone, it's gone. So you're going to lose money, you are going to lose the reputation and things like that. So whenever you are utilizing the resources of other PCs on the internet instead of your own hardware, you're actually using the cloud computing. It contains any service, infrastructure, application, or storage, or any platform that is needed for your application to run, which can be accessed from anywhere around the world. The phenomenon is called as cloud computing. If you haven't heard the word, and if I have to give another example in a layman term, right? Think of consuming electricity as an example. We pay for our electricity at different rates for different amounts, right? As we move through the day. So without electricity, we can't perform any acts, I mean any kind of jobs during this, especially during this pandemic situation. So compared to other times when we were sleeping, we consume relatively a little electricity, right? Rather than we pay for what we use, rather than we pay for the entire usage, we actually pay for what we use, right? More importantly, it is available when we need it. You can't think of Sri Lanka as an example because you know about Sri Lankan situation, right? We don't know when the electricity goes down and things like that. So you can think of large country like US where they don't have any downtime. So you can imagine the cloud computing as a similar example. So you are provided with the dedicated hardware server that is not considered to stop at any time. So the advantage is that you don't need to pay extra money for infrastructure software. Because of that, there is a significant load that can be considered or applied on that particular servers when you are scaling your application, right? So if you have to give my own definition of cloud computing, it's a delivery of on-demand computing services, from applications to storage to processing power, typically over the internet. So you can write your own definition, but this is what cloud thing is all about. So the ability to keep the services up and running for a long period of time with very little downtime, depending on the service, right? So you might get a question that what are the benefits you get out of the cloud computing, or when you go for any of the public cloud. So you get the ability to increase or decrease resources for a given workload. Say if you're starting an applications with 10 users and you are going to scale across million users, you have the flexibility to scale out based on the demand that the users accessing your website. And the second thing is the ability to turn automatically or dynamically increase the demand of resources as needed, and then ability to react quickly. So cloud services are provided with different kind of environments. I will talk about that in detail. So cloud services can allocate and deallocate resources quickly as whenever needed. So there are main factors as students you might need to know about. One is the high availability, right? Which is defined as availability for your services to remain available for customers, even in the event of catastrophic event like tsunami, earthquake, which I explained in the beginning. And then you can think of service level availability. So as a customer, every customer needs some SLA, right? So you can think of like big projects in US for the military, where they don't want to have any downtime for the infrastructure. So that is provided with the SLA, which is like there are cases that we are providing 4 nines of SLA, which is 99.999 SLA, which means that there is negligible downtime, but it can be adjusted through various deployment practices. And then the second thing is the scalability, availability, and the second factor is the scalability, which means scale up by increasing the demands or the size of size of resources that you have. And the third point is the elasticity, right? The ability to dynamically scale out and scale out the resources using auto scaling algorithms. So if you are wondering what is auto scaling, say if you are requesting your parent for some money, whenever you request some money to buy a phone, they are giving the funds which is needed, right? Even for the education, you can consider, right? So it's the auto scaling resources according to the high demand from the users that who are accessing your website. And then the fault tolerance. So fault tolerance can be defined that as the ability to automatically switch over to a backup deployment in the event of a hardware failure. Say if you're running your application in Colombo and say some incident happens in Colombo, and if you have a another zone which I will be explaining in Jaffna, you will be able to serve your customers using the availability zone. And then if entire Sri Lanka goes down, then the region comes into place. Assume there is a region or data center created in Sri Lanka and entire region goes down, then you can consider swapping the users to either Singapore or some other country where you have your deployment, secondary region deployment. And the and the fourth factor is the disaster recovery, right? It's the ability to recover operations rapidly using a warm site or cold site deployment in order to maintain the business operation. So, and then finally the customer latency, which means the enabling the deployment of load balancing across regional deployments, so that you will be able to serve your users as they need it. So these are some of the benefits that you need to know when you consider cloud computing. I talked about cloud computing, but when it comes to, companies and software companies especially, they think about the money, like even from the customer perspective, right? Without cost, anything cannot be done. So there are basically two kinds of funding models when it comes to building softwares on cloud. One is OPEX and CAPEX. So I think you might have learned this in your curriculum, but I just want to reiterate. So cost associated with buying or upgrading physical hardware such as servers, network equipments, and storage. It includes, real estate such as building and data center space. And then second is the cost that organization incurs while performing its normal business operations. So this includes like electricity consumed, the cost of employees to manage and support the system, like office space and internet connection. So you can take an example for OPEX, right? So the cost your college or the institute has to invest for the infrastructure falls as OPEX, CAPEX. And then the cost your institute spends in order to perform operations, including the, if you have a canteen, if you have transport, those can be considered as operational expenses, which is OPEX. So cloud computing reduces the capital expense because those infrastructure is provided by the cloud vendor. So I hope you are able to understand the difference between OPEX and CAPEX. So I talked about the what is cloud and what are the benefits and what are the funding models. Let me talk a bit about what are the types of clouds available, right? So probably you might have known this, but let me iterate that again as well. So there are three types of clouds that you can consider. One is public. You can consider a taxi as an example. If you are used to travel using Kangaroo cabs, it's available for public, right? You go and rent a car and travel anytime you want. So which is provides for like various kinds of users in public. And then the private, you can think about having your own Audi car, right? Which you can relate to serving a single company or provides deliver service to internal users in your institute or in your customer environment where you used to have data centers. And the final thing is the hybrid, which is a combination of private and public, both clouds, right? So you can think of hybrid as an example. There are a lot of government organization, there are a lot of government, government initiative projects considering the hybrid approach because of the fact that they don't want to send their data over the network and they have these compliance requirements and things like that, right? So you can think of hybrid deployment or hybrid cloud in terms of having more control in terms of your data and things like that. Public is all about providing all the features available on cloud to your end users. I hope you are able to understand the differences. And let me talk about the service models. So if you think of any cloud in general, there are basically three models available, right? One is the infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and then software as a service. So when you think of infrastructure as a service, in the diagram, I mean, the blue color indicates it has to be managed by the cloud vendor. You can think of AWS or Azure or GCP or even Alibaba. And then the green ones indicates the resources needs to be managed by the user, right? As you could see, the more you manage or the more you consume, the vendor will have more responsibility to manage these resources. Let me relate to another example. Everybody loves pizza, right? As a developer, let me explain with an analogy. Suppose you want to eat pizza, right? So you will have these following options. You go to the market and buy all the ingredients such as spices, cheese, etc. And then you take it to home and make it raw and put it in the oven, and that's it. You will be enjoying your pizza. In terms of cloud computing, computing, the process is termed as on-premises, or you can think of infrastructure as a service where you do everything on your. I mean, if you're doing everything on your own, it's certainly to be termed as on-prem environment, which you can see on the, which you can see in your institute or any of the customer that you're dealing with. And then if you go to the market and buy a raw prepared pizza, so which is available in Kiehl's or any of the supermarket, you can take it home and then bake it and enjoy it. In terms of cloud computing, this process is called as infrastructure as a service. So you are provided with infrastructure where you can leverage the services of someone else to make your work a bit easier. So and then still you have some work to do in terms of data access, applications, and things like that. And then third scenario, right? You can go to the market and buy a baked, prepared hot pizza. So take it to your own place and you can enjoy with the drink and with your friends. In terms of cloud computing, this process is termed as a platform as a service, where you leverage the services of someone else. You can think of Pizza Hut or Domino's in this example. The final choice is you can go to a restaurant, use their own dining, right? I mean, you order a pizza with a drink there itself and enjoy with your friends. In terms of cloud computing, this process is called as software as a service, where you don't have to do anything on your servers or on your resources. You are asking someone else to manage everything. If you have to give an example, you can think of OneDrive or Google Drive as an example. And then let me give an example to as students where to get these public clouds, because as students you don't tend to have your own servers or on-prem environment, right? So the world is moving towards public cloud, except few critical scenarios where customers don't want to send their data over network. In future, those also will be moved to public cloud. So as a user, you can leverage different public clouds. Since you are a student, let me explain some of the options, right? If you want to leverage Azure, this is one of the offer available in Azure. So you can start working with Azure by provisioning it. So again, quality things don't come free, right? I'm just kidding. When you sign up for 200, when you sign up, you are getting $200 worth of resources to start with, free charge, with 30 plus services you can access for free. And then Amazon provides the first cloud I started working with. You get a free tier with 1 year term and lots of free ways to make your applications available with a lot of resources you can play around with, and you can explore more than 100 plus services and start building your own applications using the AWS free tier. And then Google GCP, which also provides some credits, $300. You can spin a Google Cloud account and then start exploring nearly 20 plus services with a free account. And then for free as developers, we tend to go for cheap things, right? We have Heroku, DigitalOcean, and many more, which provides less services compared to other public cloud vendors, which I mentioned, but a great place to host your applications for at a cheap price or even at a free cost. So if you want to explore any of this, you just need to have a credit card just for the activation purpose. You don't need to spend any dollars on top of that. So I talked about the basics of cloud computing. Let me dive into some of the advanced concepts if you're a developer that you need to know, right? You might be hearing these buzzwords like cloud native, serverless, and things like that. So if you ask me what is cloud native, so cloud native is the paradigm of software development. For an application to be termed as cloud native, it has to be built in such a way that it can operate on any type of cloud. So it could be public, private, or hybrid model, which I explained about. So cloud native is basically about building your application. So the APIs, which denotes exposing your services as a lightweight APIs for easy integrations, right? And then you can think about packaging your application as containers, which is an architectural approach to developing an application as a collection of modular, loosely coupled services. And then you can think of building microservices. This is another buzzword which developers use to talk. Having the infrastructure, you think of having the infrastructure about having a chunks of modules by separating the logic, and then developers can choose their own language to build the features that they need, right? And finally, the agility with things like DevOps, where people, process, and technologies are combined together to promote collaborative approach of building software and making that delivery faster, right? So the cloud native is all about changing the way we build software and constructing critical business applications for your end customers, or even as a software developers for your end users. So cloud native systems are designed to embrace the rapid change or large scale and resilience that you can achieve over cloud. In a nutshell, we are facing, three challenges when developing cloud native applications. These are the key attributes when you are thinking of building cloud native applications. So you need to package, you can think of packaging applications as a lightweight containers. So cloud native applications as a collection of independent and autonomous service that are packaged as lightweight containers. And then these are developed with best breed of languages and framework. So each service of a cloud native application is developed using a language and framework which is best suited for the core functionality. And then cloud native applications are usually polyglot, which means services uses variety of languages, runtimes, and frameworks. So the developers can choose their own stack of languages. Usually they are designed as loosely coupled microservices, which allows the developers to treat each service is independent of the other. With this decoupling, a developer can focus on the core functionality rather than focusing on the infrastructure, which they don't have to struggle, right? And then automated capabilities. So when I talk about DevOps, cloud native applications are hugely automated. They play well with the concept of infrastructure as a code. So you can prepare the infrastructure, the environment using the code, and then you can replicate across different environments. So you can provide your application as fast as possible without creating the resources manually using the infrastructure as a code approach. Indeed, a certain level of automation is required simply to manage a large environment, like when you are handling millions of customers. When you think of cloud native, there are three basic concepts. According to me, you can think of, I know everybody watches cricket, right? My favorite IPL team is CSK. You can think of this CSK as a term and then relate to C as containers, S as serverless, and K for Kubernetes. So let me explain these concepts as a developer you need to know. Again, as a developer, there are common lies that we used to tell to others, right? To the QAs, to the product managers. These are some of the lies that as a developer we tend to argue, right? It worked on my machine. We haven't changed anything, and then we blame the QA saying that you are testing it wrong. Wouldn't it be nice to handle the code configuration in environment that you are deploying your software in a standardized way? That's where the concept of the containers come into play. First, as I explained, the key concept is a container. A container is a lightweight, standalone executable piece of software that includes everything you need to run your applications, which includes code, runtime, system tools, system libraries, and settings. Since the announcement of Docker back in 2010, most of the organizations and developers are adopted to containers in a large manner. It offers ways to package your application, run it portably across different environments in a consistent way, which provides a unified environment to deploy your application anywhere, right? In general, containers benefits can be seen from two perspectives, not as a developer and also for the operations who are doing the deployment and implementation, right? With containers, developers will be able to build features in quick time with the agile manner, which gives a head start in developing your applications using the boilerplate images. And for the operations team, they can ship your application in any environment exactly the same way how it works in developers environment without much cost, right? Since they don't require a separating operating system, containers use less resources. And also containers offers the portability of horizontal scaling, the thing I talked about scaling, right? Meaning you can add more identical resources within a cluster to scale on a based on a demand. And also final one is, I will be talking about Kubernetes, but if I have to talk about serverless, yes, I think one of the important thing that you need to know as a developer is the container orchestration. Say, if you're having one container, that is fine, but if you're having multiple containers, how you are going to scale across your environment, right? Across a huge environment. You can think of Netflix as the example, how they are scaling microservices across a million users. So whenever we watch movies, we usually don't get to understand how things works behind the scenes, but they are using something like orchestration in order to orchestrate these containers. That's where Kubernetes comes into play, which I will be explain. Yeah. So if you're very new to Kubernetes, I will not deep dive into details, Kubernetes is a cloud platform which is open sourced by Google in 2014. So it's a platform to manage and scale, scale applications which are made of containers, which I explained in the previous slide. So it acts as a container orchestrator to run your workloads in the way you need. When I say orchestrator, probably you might not know. Everyone must be watching this Euro Cup 2020, right? Which is similar to FIFA, but it's for the Euro continent. In one of the recent matches, you might have seen Austrian player like Lazara who got injured, and then he was replaced by another player. Similar way, each of the players can be considered as containers. So when something happened to containers where your application is running on, each of the container will be replaced by another container, which will take over the operations, right? So there will be a master node. You can think of master node as a coach who will be sending out the player to replace the infected player or, injured player, right? So you can think of container orchestration as a way to replace something if something happens to the existing container. So Kubernetes does this job. It does different kind of things such as automated scheduling. So it provides an advanced scheduler that helps in launching the container and scale the nodes across different environment. And then it also provides self-scaling, which means rescheduling and replacing and restarting the dead containers which are not active, and then automated rollouts and rollbacks. So whenever something happens, it rollbacks for the system. In case of a failure, it enables the rollbacks and come back to the desired stage it was used to be earlier. And then horizontal scaling. You can think of scaling your application in a large manner. It can scale up and down as per required, and then it can be automated with the CPU and different metrics that you want to have. And then service discovery and load balancing. It uses unique IP and DNS in order to match the containers, in order to scale and deliver the application to your end users. Let me explain the final term, which is one of my favorite concept, which is serverless. So you can think of serverless as an example where you are, in order to, you are thinking of application where you don't have to worry about the infrastructure, and it provides a lot of business value, right? It's fully a managed service. So there are a lot of serverless options available across different cloud vendors. Something which developers use more frequent are Lambda, which is available on AWS, and then Azure Functions, and then Google Cloud Functions. So if you really want to understand how it works, operating system and framework patching is done by your cloud vendor, and then there is zero administrative tasks that you need to have in order to manage your underlying infrastructure. You can think of the environment as a black box where you are putting just your function, and it's going to act based on events that are happening around, right? So you just deploy your code and it runs on so that you can focus on adding more features. Your code runs within seconds and scales quickly as needed. So serverless compute reacts to events, which is in real time, to events and triggers. So whenever you upload an image, say if you want to perform an operations like resizing an image, you don't have to write the code for this. You will have to upload the image to any storage, and then you can trigger a serverless function in order to do the resizing operation. So this comes with few lines of code where you don't have to spend days and days in writing the application. So developers can quickly add features as possible. And then billing is typically calculated based on the number of executions. So you pay for what you use, right? So it is calculated based on the execution time and the memory used. These are some of the benefits which I don't have to talk about. which is providing easy development and deployment, and then you are paying for the execution, and it's completely event driven. So I talked about containers, I talked about Kubernetes, I talked about serverless. So if you are a newbie to cloud, these are three terms that you need to know when it comes to cloud native. Let's dive into Azure. I will not cover in detail about all the features available on Azure, but as a public cloud, you might need to know one of the example as a developer, right? So that's where I thought of bringing Azure into play. So Azure supports all cloud service models, infrastructure as a service, a platform as a service, and then hybrid options, right? In any combination without any reservation. So it's our customer's choice whether they want to run the applications on any of these service models, which I explained. You can integrate with dev tools like Visual Studio and then publish it to cloud whenever you need. So you can think of infrastructure as a service for a scenario where you want to easily deploy something to cloud. Say you have application running in your desktop, and then if you don't know anything about some of the PaaS services on Azure or any cloud, you can just deploy on a VM virtual machine, which is called as EC2 on AWS, which is similar to how you're running in local, right? You take your application and put it there, which is called as infrastructure as a service. And then you're provided with PaaS option, which I won't be covering all the PaaS service available on Azure, but where you don't have to manage a lot of things. There are 300 plus services available on Azure, and it's growing day by day, right? I think we need to have each day a session to cover all these services, but let me explain some of the concepts in general. So this is relevant to all the clouds. So Azure is publicly available in 64 regions as of now. Since we talked about scaling, since we talked about disaster recovery, since we talked about resiliency, these are supported through different regions, which is available in 64 region, which is combinedly more than in total when it comes to GCP and AWS, in order to provide the software available to customers at any time, at any day of the year. So the SLA is covered by the regions that you see in the particular slide. Since we have 300 plus services available on Azure, let me give a quick introduction to a few of the compute storage services available on Azure using a diagram, right? Oops. Let me switch to this. Hopefully I can. Yeah. So these are the services that I talked about. So you're providing networking, web databases, DevOps, and different tooling options. But there are services that you need to know as a developer. Starting from compute, you can think of virtual machines to deploy your application. Then we have something called app service in order to deploy any single page applications, or even your APIs or mobile applications. You can deploy it on app service. So the everything is managed for you in terms of deployment, in terms of CI/CD, in terms of domain controlling, in terms of certificates. You can think of app service as an example. And then Azure Functions is some service that I talked about, which is provided as a serverless option on Azure. And then Azure Kubernetes Service is the managed service on Azure to manage your Kubernetes environment. And then Service Fabric, most of the Azure services are running on top of Service Fabric, which is very similar to Kubernetes in order to scale your workloads across different environments. You can think of that as another compute service. And then we have container instances in order to deploy your Docker images and run your container images on top of that. So these are some of the compute services. And when it comes to storage, we are providing NoSQL databases such as Cosmos DB, which is a multi-model scalable database. So whenever you insert a data which is replicated across 4 regions, you don't have to create a secondary region in order to manage data. And then we are providing SQL, which is a SQL database, and then we are providing some of the storage options such as blob, disk, files, and things like that. And then you think of networking, we are providing with something called VNet, and then which is called as virtual networks, traffic manager in order to manage the traffic across different regions, a load balancer in order to prioritize the request and route based on the demands that you get. And then some of the other things that you need to know is in terms of security. We are providing something called Security Center in order to get notifications in terms of DOS attacks, and if you want to prevent your environment. And as a developer, one thing that you need to know about the AI and machine learning, there are 25 plus Azure services which are provided or built out of the box. You just need to consume the endpoint in order to build your algorithms or anything that you want to build on top of Azure, right? I don't want to cover all these in details, but if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me. Let me go back to slides quickly. I think I'm running out of time, but let me quickly. So one of the examples that I wanted to cover today is thing, right? As a developer, I talked about different things, but if you are application developer, if you are deploying a large application across multiple regions, this is how the typical deployment would look like. You might have a load balancer and then a primary region and a secondary region. Primary region could be in Southeast Asia, and then secondary region in US, where you have your primary customers, right? So one is from Singapore and one is from US. And then you could see each region is provided with 3 availability zones, which means even one of the zone goes down, other 2 zones will be available to serve your customers, which can be routed through load balancer. And think of a scenario where entire region goes down. So one of the recent incidents during the COVID is that one of our service of other cloud, due to overheating, their entire region went down, right? So in that time, in order to serve your customers, you can switch to a secondary region in order to provide the SLA they need. And then if you go deep inside each of these availability zones, which are built using data centers are again a number of machines or servers or racks, consist of several compute engines, which provided with different machine configurations and things like this. So whenever a user wants to deploy, they can pick the machine type with the memory and the CPU usage, and then they can deploy the application they want to. So there are 2 things that you need to know here. One is the availability zone and the region and the data center. So these are some of the key things that you need to know irrespective of the cloud vendor. So this can be, latency, connectivity, all these things are depend on the region that you're connecting to. So even though some of the regions are very close, when it comes to negative, latency, some of the regions are very slow, even though they are close, due to the connectivity that is provided through the cloud vendor. So in terms of Azure, even though South India is very near to Colombo, but on the latency wise, Singapore is faster than South India. And this is some of the reference architecture as a developer you can consider. You can think of building, cloud native mobile applications, so APIs, and then you are deploying on cloud where you have 2 regions, and then you are consuming some of the services that I explained, such as app service, Azure Functions, and load balancer, and then you are using Cosmos DB as a database. This is how your deployment would look like. So whenever a developer commits a code, it goes and deploy to a particular Azure app service, and the users will be able to access. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Some of the tips for beginners before I dive into the demo. If you are a beginner, you need to know these facts, right? So one of the important thing when it comes to cloud is, if you don't know how to use, you might end up in spending your money in the way the cloud expects, right? So sometimes there are scenarios that customers have lost billions of dollars if they don't want to if they don't know to manage the things or the environment. So you need to implement a cap on spending. So there are ways to implement the cap on spending. As a developer, this is one of the things that you need to consider. Many developers have gone to leverage cloud services, but they tend to forget the fact that applying the cap, and then delete the resources that whenever you don't use it. That is another important thing. Even if you stop the resources, there are some services which are consuming a charge, or you need to pay for those underlying environment. And then you need to carefully understand the permissions and access. Again, identity is another important whole concept, which you need to know how to provide role access, how to provide different authorization mechanisms to each of the users who are accessing your cloud environment. That is another important thing. Again, the third, fourth thing is connect with all the experts out there, ask questions, follow tutorials, reach out to them, and then have fun. So start building your applications on top of cloud. You can build the things that way you need. It's really easy if you understand what you are doing. These are the messages I wanted to deliver. Let me quickly jump into demo. If I think I have, 5 minutes probably I will cover. I don't want to start from the scratch, but let me explain, right? The things I want to build. So if you're having an idea, this is one of the idea that I thought about today. So these days we are having cricket match between England and Sri Lanka, right? So these days we are losing all the matches. You can think of sentiment analysis. So one of the things that I wanted to do is I want to analyze the tweets that users are tweeting, and I want to analyze the sentiment analysis. So if you are new to sentiment analysis, it's about how it's about analyzing the piece of text and allocating a score based on the words are positive or negative. So usually it ranges between 0 to 1. If the words are below 0.5, then it's going to be negative. If the sentiment score is above 0.5, then it's going to be positive, right? These are some of the samples I took. So if you have an idea like this and if you want to implement, again, I had this idea back in 2015, and I spent nearly 3 months to build this application, and it never went live. Those days it's very hard to, I didn't understand the concept of cloud. Even though I know the basic things, I don't know how to leverage. So this is where the importance of cloud computing comes into play, and you need to know how to leverage different resources in order to build your application. So this is the application that I'm going to build on Azure, where it's going to collect all the tweets, and then it's going to use one of the serverless option Azure function in order to see whether the function is, whether the tweet is a positive, negative, or neutral, using the cognitive service. So we are getting the sentiment score using the cognitive service, which is one of the AI service provided by Azure. And then you can store the data on any of the SQL database and expose it through the Power BI to your end user. So this particular application will hardly take 15 minutes if you're going to build. I have already started. Since we are running out of time, let me explain the concept using a whiteboard, right? So this is a user, and you're going to build an application and expose it as a dashboard where users will be able to see the sentiment plotted in a world map, where the positive sentiments are coming from, where the negative sentiments are coming from, which is built on Power BI. And this is the Azure environment, right? So you can think of tweets coming from different parts of the world. We are using Azure Cognitive Service in order to leverage the tweets and analyzing the sentiment of the tweet, whether it's sentiment score of the tweets between 0 and 1. And then we are passing that to Azure functions in order to determine a negative, positive, or neutral. And then we are passing to any of the storage that you have. It could be SQL storage or SQL database, or NoSQL database. So you can think of building this using an API. That is one way. One of the easiest way that Azure provides is logic apps. So you can connect different things together using logic apps. So all these services can be connected towards logic apps. So logic app is a low code, no code approach. So we are providing two ways to build application. One is using designer, one is using the code. So since I am a very poor coder, I tend to use designer. It becomes easier for me to build the concept that I wanted. So you can leverage the things. If you are a business user, you can leverage these services, use the logic apps to do the things that you need. So we are providing 300 plus connectors in order to build this application. So in this case, let me show. I am not going to build from the scratch since we are running out of time, but let me show what I have already, right? So if I navigate to, again, in terms of Azure, this is what you will see when you go to portal.azure.com, where I am provided with the dashboard where I will be able to see different environments, different health of different resources. But this is where you will create your resources group. Resource group is a logical grouping of different resources that you have on Azure. In this case, I have created a resource group Edge 101, where you can see the different resources. Sorry, it should be RG Cutting Edge 101, where you can see different resources that I explained, right? So we have logic app, we have Cognitive Service, and then we have Power BI. If I open this cutting edge logic app, you can see my logic that I explained about, right? Let's give a couple of minutes to get this loaded. But one of the thing quickly, I will jump into Azure Function. So this is the project, which I have already built. But if you want to build from the scratch, I will give this code available on GitHub. You can leverage this cloud. So what I'm basically doing is I'm creating a simple Azure functions, which is getting this, sentiment score from the Cognitive Service. I'm assigning the score, which I'm getting from the, which I'm getting from the HTTP request from the Cognitive Service. And if the score is below 0.3, then I'm assigning it as negative. If it's between 0.3 and 0.6, I'm assigning it as neutral, and rest of the case, it's going to be positive, right? So this is a simple Azure function in order to detect the scenario. So you can deploy this function on Azure Cloud, and then once you deploy, you can see the logic app, which I explained about. So this consists of different services that I talked about. So what we are doing here is whenever tweet is posted, in this case, what I wanted to do is I wanted to analyze how the world is reacting to vaccination, which is one of the thing that everyone is talking about, right? So whether it's people are feeling positive about it or negative about it, I am going to search the term called vaccination from different parts of the world, and it's going to trigger this particular HTTP request every 10 seconds and get all the words or the tweets that are users are tweeting on that particular period of time. And we are passing that to, Azure Cognitive Service in order to get the sentiment of that particular tweet, whether it's positive or negative. And then we are passing that to Azure function and getting the sentimental score of that particular function. And finally, we are writing that to, Power BI. So this is a scenario. If you have to do, it might take another 15 minutes, but this particular particular session or the demo, I have blocked it out, so you can go and check it out, how to build step by step. But let me show the outcome of this particular demo, right? Probably I need to minimize this. Yeah, let me take this out. Can I minimize this? Okay, since we're running out of time, let me maximize this a bit, and then you can see the Power BI I have created. What we are right now doing is we have created a data set with date, location, score, sentiment, and tweet, and we are building a dashboard, something like this, right? So this is the outcome that we will see in real time. And I didn't take much time to build this. Actually, it took nearly 15 minutes to build. And when you refresh, you can see the tweets which are coming in real time, and you can see the positive sentiment, neutral sentiments, which are from different parts of the world. And if you want to deep dive into each of these areas, you can go and see how the world is reacting to vaccination in this particular scenario. So as a developer, this is just a small idea which I got, and I turned into action within quick time, right? So similar to this, you can start building your cloud application or any application to cloud within quick time if you know what are the services you need to use and how to leverage the services in a right manner. If you have any question, feel free to reach out to me. And a demo is available in the form of code in GitHub and also in the form of cloud. You can access these resources. I will be providing these resources at the end of the slide. Yeah, and finally, I want to cover some important things. If you're new to Azure or if you're new to any cloud, start with some certification. So you can start with fundamental certifications, which is the 900 on Azure. Similarly, AWS Cloud Practitioner also provides. Similarly, GCP also provides. So start with any of these cloud certifications, which will be useful to kickstart your journey on Azure to get your job on any of the cloud technologies that we talked about. And then you can move into associate and expert level in the future, right? And then second thing is Microsoft Learn. If you want to get started with Microsoft Learn, and if you don't have any money to spend on cloud environment, you can use this lab environment in order to create or snapshot in order to spin up your resources on that particular environment and do your labs with then step-by-step instructions. So start using aka.ms/learn in order to learn different services and start building your application. And finally, we are providing $100 credit for Azure students. You can leverage that as well. Any questions on cloud, irrespective of any cloud, you can always reach out to me. I will try to help as soon as possible or in any way I could, right? And finally, thanks a lot for providing me this opportunity, and feel free to reach out and have fun at Cutting Edge 2021. Thank you.